Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Doug Buchanan, Editor-in-Chief of Columbus Business First. I'm also proud to be a member of the CMC Board of Trustees. Speaking of great organizations that support CMC, we'd like to thank our series presenter, the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation and Capital South. They, along with series sponsor Thompson Hine and our forum sponsor, King Business Interiors, are helping us kick off CMC's Developing a Dynamic Downtown series. This new series begins with today's forum, and it will continue periodically for the next year. Each forum will look at the steps being taken to make downtown Columbus a dynamic and thriving place to live, work, and play. We're also grateful to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream, which is being carried on CMC's social media platforms. And thank you as well to the Grange Insurance Audubon Center for their ongoing support of CMC. Let's thank all of our supporters today. All right, now on to today's conversation. Can a spectacular new piece of public art help to revitalize downtown? Current, made from 78 miles of twine and bound together with more than 500,000 knots, will be the city's largest public art installation ever. We're excited to hear today how this newest addition to the Columbus art scene became reality. And to introduce today's panel and set the stage for our conversation, please welcome back to CMC Marshall Shorts, the Creative-in-Chief of Artfluential and the founding board member of the Maroon Arts Group. Marshall, podium is yours.
Thank you. Well, first, let me thank the CMC for having me. I wish I was savvy enough to go off the top of my head, but I wrote some comments down. It's an honor to introduce the esteemed panel of leaders and a world-renowned artist, Janet Echelman, whose piece, Current, they will be discussing here shortly. But they made the mistake of giving me, an artist, the mic for 3 minutes and asked me to pull off a miracle of keeping my comments to 3 minutes. So, but I have the duty to fill that time as only an artist could, which is really just asking a bunch of questions. As I considered the topic of today's conversation, this question of whether a striking new work of public art can help revitalize downtown Columbus, my artist response is, of course, yes. My cynical and analytical response is no, of course not. At least not alone, that is. In reality, my answer is much more nuanced. The transformation happens way before the art is on display. The final presentation is a culmination of the collective work of many people. The immersive empathy an artist must have in relationship to the public they are creating for, the funders who control the means of production, the policymakers, the workers who labor to bring the vision forth, and the public for agreeing to participate. So while I believe the majestic work of Ms. Echelman and the countless other artists who will profoundly impact the tenor and energy of downtown, my belief is that the actual transformation happens well before the work becomes available for public gaze. Public art is an introduction to the stories we want to tell, a medium for transmitting shared meanings, values, beliefs, and in some cases, dominance. Art in the public can reflect the beauty of our humanity or attempt to obscure the ugly parts. We cannot also dismiss the soft power of art to ask critical questions, like what do we actually mean by public art? Who is the public art trying to engage? Who creates it? Who is entitled to it? Whose story does it tell? How will this public art be cared for? Who owns it? Whose value? I told you I had a lot of questions, right? Whose values does it articulate? Is public art a public good? If the arts are a force for social change, then why is it still an afterthought when it comes to solving division, problems, or even public policy? I could keep going, but these questions extend the discourse beyond the aesthetic of art into the responsibility of art. Art in the public does its best work when it functions as more than window dressing or soft marketing for a city to attract new business and residents. It is at its best when it helps to create shared meaning, evokes empathy, and connects us, and helps us interrogate our lived realities. Public art is at its best when it serves as an entry point and not an end. For this, I think art is essential, meaning absolutely necessary and extremely important. However, we should be careful of asking art to do more than its fair share of labor. The rigor and work are equally our responsibility as a public. It would be naive to think that the arts can replace our issues like food scarcity, housing insecurity, systemic and institutional racism, or personal safety. there's a greater value that the arts should be afforded as we think about revitalizing communities. If we're serious about creating robust futures, then the art must be valued as essential. A truly robust culture is concerned about all its public, and it exposes members to the ideas and the experiences of others that the arts can only convey viscerally and not solely intellectual. And if the public chooses to engage art with radical imagination, the possibility of tapping into bigger, deeper collective vision that can propel us toward a more sustainable and equitable futures won't be too far on the horizon. Finally, whatever we do, please, let's not forget the artists. I'll say that again. Whatever we do, we must not forget the artists. I'll end with a quote from one of my favorite scholar, activists, and freedom fighters, Professor Robert D.G. Kelly, who says, "Without new visions, we don't know what to build, only what to knock down." And now it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome today's speakers, sculptor Janet Echelman, Jeff Edwards, president of Edwards Companies and president, CEO, and chairman of Install Building Products, and our host, Tom Katzenmeyer, president and CEO of the Greater Columbus Arts Council. You can read, yes. You can read more about today's speakers in your forum flyers, but before we begin, I'd like to invite Janet Echelman to set the stage for today's conversation. Thank you.
Can we dim those lights for a moment, because I want to share a few images, or even turn them off and then you can turn them back on. Is that possible? Okay. Well, I'm just going to briefly share how it is I've come to be here sitting next to these two incredible gentlemen. I grew up really involved in classical music, and at 14 got my big break to play with the orchestra where I lived. Oops, how's that? And discovered I hate performing and have like terrible pains in my stomach. So as that door closed, it opened a door to college. But then I'm a slow reader, and the music got me into Harvard University, and I thought, how the heck am I going to get through this? And that's how I ended up in my very first art course, the only course that didn't require big papers and lots of books. From there, I thought, okay, I want to be an artist. So I applied to 7 art schools around the country, including some in the Midwest, and I was rejected by all 7. So I realized I'd have to find my own way. Is the mic too close, too far? We're okay. I decided I would learn from craftspeople who had traditions that had lived generation after generation. With $300 in my pocket and a one-way ticket to Bali, I went to apprentice to craftsmen, and I began studying batik, and I was making paintings. I would come home every year around Christmas time, have an exhibition. Whatever I sold, that's what I would live on for the next year. And after about a year, I applied to go on a Fulbright to India. And I shipped all of my special paints and dyes and brushes, and the US Embassy invited me to create exhibitions. I was waiting for those paints to arrive, waiting, and they never arrived. So I had to come up with some alternative, and I was on a beach with fishermen in South India. And I started thinking, how in the world am I going to fill these exhibition halls that they have rented? And I suddenly looked at those fishermen and those nets, and I said, well, that's volumetric form without heavy, solid material. And I began collaborating with those fishermen. I became their student and began making my very first sculptures, which when we hoisted into the air, I discovered became these ever-changing sculptures choreographed by the wind. And what's important is that I never set out to be a sculptor of wind. It just was through engaging with what was there already. That led to a piece in Spain for just a weekend, but it turned out that the urbanist redesigning Porto, Portugal was there and said, can you make this as a permanent work for the city? 3 years later, after the birth of both of my children, We raised the largest piece of handcrafted lace in the world, 40,000 square feet. And it was hard to believe that what I had imagined was now a built reality. I had been searching for that sense of being protected and covered and sheltered, and at the same time feeling liberated with the infinite space of the sky. And then the Vancouver Winter Olympics happened, the Phoenix, Arizona civic space. This had been parking lots at a notorious strip club. Pieces that began to travel. This is Amsterdam, Sydney, Australia. This is Munich last summer, our nation's capital at the Smithsonian. This is London, where the mayor of London made the tube exit only because there were so many people, they didn't want people to get trampled. Madrid, Dubai. This is the Vienna Museum Quarter. This is Los Angeles, West Hollywood, the Sunset Strip. This is called Dreamcatcher. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, connecting all of their buildings in their global campus, Impatient Optimist. Let's see. The twine that I'm using here in Columbus, that is in that photo I just showed you as well, is what they use in space by NASA to tether the Mars rover. And it's a moment to mention this is not about STEM, it's STEAM. When you bring art and science together, things happen. Speaking of STEAM, this is downtown Philadelphia, tiny water particles. This is their city hall, and it is triggered every time the subway trains underground come through, then the curtain of mist comes, and you can see if there's more east-west traffic at certain parts of the day, and by the way, you've just missed your train. Really playful. I'm experimenting, always trying to learn and push myself to the edge to stay alive and discovering. This is the Stuttgart Ballet, and there are new dance collaborations. Working with cities, the first time I anchored to privately held buildings only for a temporary work, no one ever thought that a city could pull off a work like that would be permanent, where different private building owners would work together for the public good. I wonder which city is the one that's led the nation in that. Working with lighting, partnering with Google, data arts. This is a work in Vancouver, where people are painting with light on the surface of my sculpture. This is on the coast in Florida, in St. Petersburg, on the pier, a piece called Bending Arc. And Hurricane Ian just went through, and the headline on the news was that the sculpture dazzles viewer as the hurricane moves through. We like that, 155 miles per hour. And that brings us to that very special city that I was telling you about, which I first visited 5 years ago to come and speak. And I was honestly blown away by the unique human Columbus way. I've never seen it anywhere else. I was meeting with people from the city, the county, the state. I couldn't believe it. And I'm telling you, it's not this way everywhere in this country. It's something very, very special. And this gentleman sitting to my left is the kind of person who makes things happen that other people only dream about. So let me quickly just share that dream. Jeff and Don DeVere walked me through this intersection of High Street and Gay Street, and I just began to research and learn. And after that site visit, I discovered that that very site had been part of this historic arched lighting that began with the 1888 convention of the Union Army, and that illumination was in fact really quite unique. Columbus was leading the country. These were called, this led to being called the Arch City, but in fact they're not arches, they're arched trusses. And that interested me as well, but this idea that Columbus was also a leader in the whole nation in electrifying and illuminating its city. And so I began looking at what was still here that has led to this Arch City name. And then you can see this is the first sketch on Zoom where the red lines, the engineering team and I began sketching about, well, this is what it was, what could we do, what could we make? And if we could pull with tension from all four corners of High and Gay Street, then we could create something unique and new, a current, referencing the beautiful river nearby, but also this electricity, this sense of movement and change happening in downtown. And take the colors of the earth, which led to the bricks of the old State House, the reds, and the blues of the river, and bring those together. And just to talk a little bit more, or just to show you a little bit of the process of computer science and engineering in my studio. This is all part of the construction documents. Don is nodding his head, where we're checking and understanding the geometries as well as the forces. This is the lighting plan. And as we began to study the work and its colors and how it would interact with lighting, it has brought us to this week. And here you can see from the studies in the computer to the heavy equipment lifting this up into the sky, attaching to these historic buildings. There were many challenges dealing with historically preserved buildings. Everybody worked together. This is an example. It's proof that we can work together to create something for everyone. This is public. It is for every single person. And these are hot off the press from last night at midnight. So I'll be down there working again tonight. But it is my very pleasure to let you know how much I love Columbus. Thank you.
Well, we could probably end it right there. Yes. I don't know what else to say. We have a great sold-out crowd here. I know there's a lot of people listening in also, and it will obviously be recorded. We heard your side of the story, so we're going to go to Jeff next. And the basic question for Jeff is why? Why, and when did you come up with this idea? When did you first meet Janet? When she was here 5 years ago? What's the story here?
Yeah, so very nearly near that time, 5 years ago, I would say, was when in fact, we were both just kind of trying to remember exactly when and under exactly what circumstances. But, I think it's clear, at least to me, I'm assuming to many of you after you saw what she just presented, that, it's a spectacular piece. Why we had the crazy idea, I think, to put it there, because even Janet questioned that, because I think you had mentioned that the only other time that you'd actually hung one on even a semi-permanent basis over public land was in London, because the Queen owned all four corners.
That's right.
And I said, well, lucky as it might be that we control two of the corners, Don DeVere and a partner control one of the other corners, and then that same partner controls the other corner. So it was possible. But it really started with the idea of wanting to give as a family, and a really significant piece to the city of Columbus, and really ultimately to the museum. And it really took really a village. Janet's team, a lot of members of our team, the city of Columbus. I remember when we started out with the city of Columbus and the various departments, we really thought it was going to be next to impossible. And I think the word came down both from the mayor and the mayor's office and Mike Stevens and others to, your answer is to get to yes, right? Because it was a lot easier to say no. And so ultimately getting through that was very important. But again, it was back to mostly the placemaking. We have a number of galleries. They're going to relocate into our Gay Street development there. We have the museum and CCAD as kind of a barbell end to the kind of the galleries that will be on High Street. And so from a kind of wanting to make a statement about being, having art be core centric to this neighborhood and then to couple that with entertainment uses was very important. And after that, we walked to lunch at the Columbus Club, which is a very short walk from the corner of Gay and High, where we have another significant development going on. And it was kind of then that it became apparent that we really needed to kind of bring these two projects and these two developments together to kind of get the impact, and it really starts, though, with Current.
Can you talk a little bit more about your larger vision for all of Gay Street and where it starts and where it ends and all of that?
So, and I don't take credit for Gay Street, right? There's a lot of people that did a lot of development there before we came along. We've added to that development. It is probably, without doubt, one of the more successful human scale, where buildings have been preserved, streets in downtown, healthy businesses, entertainment uses. It's actually home to, at least in a pretty tight radius, more residents, has a denser resident population than really anywhere else in the Central Business District. There's about 2,000 residents currently. There's another 1,000 plus, probably closer to almost 2,000 in the works. So at some point in time, we'll have the density that you really need to have to kind of have a livable, workable urban environment in that way. But the human scale attracted us there, and I'm kind of an historic building buff, so it had the bones, and it was really the right place to kind of start.
So for both of you, sometimes there, and actually Marshall referred to this a little bit, sometimes there can be controversy involving public art. I'm sure you've run into this in other cities in the world. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people don't want to spend the money on it. There's other needs in the communities. There's birds. We heard about birds here. We're actually in the Audubon Center, so we need to be careful about what we say about birds here. And I don't want to be attacked by the birds when I leave the building. Yes, yes, we love birds. But that turned out to be a false thing, right? I mean, we don't need to worry about the birds.
I'm happy to talk about that.
Yes, talk about that. But talk about the spend on this vis-a-vis other needs and how you feel about that.
Well, I mean, clearly, the way I look at it is, I kind of have an abundance view, right? And I don't mean that's there for everyone, but that I've been fortunate, my family's been fortunate and lucky enough to be able to give back in a lot of different ways. So it is not in any way adverse to or exclusive of the care that we would have about other things that the community's in need of. And in fact, sometimes when the big conversation lately is, and I've said this in this last forum that I was here actually, because it turned to affordable housing, and I bristle a little bit when all we talk about is affordable housing, because there's so many other needs that go unmet, and when you really get right back to it, whether it's medical or whether it's transportation or food insecurity or not, lack of affordable housing, et cetera, it really comes down to a living wage conversation. So I happen to be in that camp. And try to do our best as a company, and as a business to kind of pay people the way they need to be able to be paid in order to have a living wage and afford the things they need to, to afford. Now, with all the economic, growth that's coming our way, we as a city, as we know, and as a community, have to figure out how this time to do a better job probably than last time of making sure that largesse and that improvement is shared really in a much broader spectrum than it was really over the last 10 or 15 years.
So Janet, talk about the birds and any other things that you've run into in other cities like that.
Sure. Well, I have been, the first project I showed you, the first permanent work in cities was the piece in Portugal in 2004, so it's almost 20 years now. We've never had any news of the death of a bird ever. And we've done a lot of research, worked with a firm called Bioengineering. We worked with the Florida Wildlife Commission, who supported our work in an area that is refuge for coastal birds. It turns out the kinds of netting that are dangerous to birds are things like deer netting, which are much smaller and are not moving. And it turns out the things that are really dangerous to birds are like glass windows, because their perception doesn't read them. My work is more like nature. You've never seen a bird impale itself on a tree branch with leaves moving in the wind. My work has color. It has physical form that moves and changes just as the leaves move with the wind. And birds can see it and understand it. In fact, in Florida, what they said, like in seafood restaurants where they're trying to keep birds away, they put like kites with tails because the movement of something visual in the wind alerts them to stay away. So that's the good news about my work and birds.
In a little quick sidebar, we actually saved some fish as a result of working with Janet, as we're working on a separate project with her that eliminated a saltwater aquarium that I had visions of fish dying and, you know, ill-fated kindergarten field trips, and so we got rid of that, and instead are working with her on another project. So we saved countless fish, I'm sure, somewhere in Florida. So.
We wrestle with our identity here. And I love what you said about Columbus at the beginning, and I don't know whether this can be part of it now as we add to this collection. You and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, there are 1,000 pieces of public art in Franklin County. You just don't think about it like that. David Yon, who's here from Dublin, has quite the collection up there. And I could go on and on about that. We're launching a public art plan work right now. We have a year ahead of us. Jeff is helping us on that, but I honestly believe this can be part of the story. We have lots of, and you've seen this in other cities, I'm sure. I want to hear you talk about places that you've been that have really done it well and planned it well, places that maybe we should go check out, take a look at. And Jeff, same question for you too.
Well, I mean, Columbus is the first one to be able to pull off a permanent work commissioned to separately held private buildings anywhere in the country or the world. So how about everybody come check out Columbus? I will say that many people around the country are very interested in this model of privately donated work to public good, and also to a public collection. The idea to donate this to the Columbus Museum of Art, which has this historically rich tradition, and to make it, I mean, museums around the country are trying to reach out to cities, and here is a way that taking, you know, one of the gems of this community and connecting it to this new vital downtown, I think is also kind of thinking outside the box, breaking the mold and teaching everyone else around the country what you can do here. So I may not be telling you where else to look, I'm telling everyone else to look here.
Jeff, do you have a thought on that?
Sure. I mean, I think most people who travel to cities that they enjoy probably like a lot of the same similar things in cities. I mean, they like energy, they like a lot of times historic architecture, they like green spaces, they like entertainment uses, they like retail, they like a number of things. Some of those things are easier for Columbus to pull off in the short term, some are harder. The idea that we're going to have a booming retail environment in downtown Columbus anytime soon would be difficult. The idea that we could vastly improve the tree canopy, for instance, and add green space downtown and make the streets much more friendly and be a real leader on the public art side, very doable and very doable in the near term. You know, basically, some of those other things just take a matter of density and might take a decade or two. But, you know, my family and I are building a house and moving down into the Gay Street area, as a matter of fact, And I got frustrated in a planning meeting that we were in where we were talking about the future of Gay Street and all the improvements that we were going to make there that are going to be great. And not, when I say we, it's CDDC and it's the City of Columbus and all of us as a team working on it. But the conversation around retail, because we were struggling with this kind of wrought iron fence and mail delivery, and I said, I'm really worried about where the Amazon packages and where the UPS packages are coming. I'm not worried about walking out my front door and buying a dress shirt 35 feet down the street. That's just the reality of the situation, right? So I think Columbus could be a great urban city and one that other cities would completely look up to. And some of those things to make us that way are easier to do than others, and I think public art's one of them. And as you know how I feel about developers being involved in making public art happen for you, Tom. So just for you, only for you.
Amen to that, yes. So what's next? You must have another idea in your head. We sort of talked about something over there in the corner. I don't know whether you want to blurt that out here in this meeting or not.
I mean, I grew up here. Members of my family, even parents, grew up here. So we've been here a long time, and for those of you that are new to the city, the idea that the peninsula and Franklinton and the riverfront could look the way and have the presence that it has now was really not fathomable not very many years ago. So, really, because of the weight and the heft and the amount of money and effort that was put into those and how, spectacular the spaces are, the real center of the whole central business district needs to shift. And one of the things that we suffer from as a city is kind of a lack of connectivity and some barriers in between those things that are successful, whether it's Columbus Commons, the riverfront itself, now the peninsula in Franklinton, the Gay Street area, the Arena District. They're great in and of themselves, but to get in between those great assets and those great environments and neighborhoods, et cetera, it's not quite as good. So, and we also have streets that are too wide, much wider than many of the other cities that we visit that we say feel much better. And that's both, at least at the beginning, maybe a hindrance, but in the end, maybe a plus, because in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, those streets stop becoming just streets that are built for cars, especially now with COVID, especially with the work from home idea and the idea that resident population is coming up and office workers we're doing well as a city to get office workers back, but even still, it would become more livable if it was more resident friendly, meaning the streets are places for pedestrians and residents to feel comfortable, not just cars. So that's, I think, something that as a city's on the list. It came out in the strategic plan. All the things that I think CDDC and the city are looking at came through that strategic planning process and are all things that will make really the city that much more livable for those that want to venture downtown and live downtown.
And do you have another piece of public art in your head or location?
Actually, we are, even in the two developments, the one on Broad Street, we've commissioned a Ohio artist to do a piece that'll be in a lobby but visible in a lit lobby on the street, which is an interesting piece that she's going to call Witness, which is about a tree that predates the establishment of City of Columbus in 1812, and it's kind of a neat lit piece. There's another one that we're working with her on also, about half a block north of Janet's piece on High Street. So I think, on a go-forward basis, I think we'll have some relatively substantial piece of public art, either local, regional, national, international, world-renowned, some form or another, really with everything we do. But you may be referring to the idea that I think brushstrokes in flight should leave the airport escalator lobby and come downtown and end up in a really great public space.
Yes. To move it away from the escalators that are at the airport, yes. You've probably seen it there, Janet, when you're flying in and out.
I might have.
You might have, yes. You didn't notice it, yes.
So maybe not.
So what's next for you, Janet? Where else are you working? What other cities?
Oh, my goodness. Well, we just got back from Milan, Italy, and we're going to Romania. We're going to another collaboration with this stellar team. Jeff and Don have been working with me for a new piece in Florida, in Delray, Florida, called Intracoastal, because it is right on the Intracoastal Waterway. And that's a very exciting piece, again, engineered for a Category 5 hurricane. It will dazzle. 2 works in Texas, just in Cambridge, Massachusetts for the Broad Institute, which initially sequenced the human genome for the first time in human history. Talk about a difficult mission to express to the world. A traveling museum exhibition, a dance performance where the sculpture, the netted sculpture, becomes a dancer, and it's an exploration of what it means to mutually influence, as we humans are with our planet, influencing one another, but not as equals. So that is just a taste of the sort of things we're working on right now in the studio. But nothing is more exciting than arriving here last night and walking, driving in, seeing the piece, and then beginning to shape it with colored light last night. I've been living, through the whole pandemic. This piece was a fiction. It's a computer model and then suddenly to meet it is quite a meaningful experience. So I invite you and look forward to sharing that with you. And one thing that really draws me to the street, and I am really grateful to Jeff and all of you who have made this piece possible over a very busy intersection, High Street. Every single person feels entitled to be in the street. Not everyone feels comfortable to go into an art gallery, much less an art museum. But everyone feels comfortable in the street and feels they are entitled to be there. And so to bring art there is really sort of, today we opened with an artist talking about these big questions, like who is the art for? And this work is really for everyone.
Hear, hear. So we are now exactly at the Q&A portion of the program. I'm going to ask people to line up at the microphone in the back by Sophia there. And we're also going to take questions online. While we're doing that, I want to just recognize a few significant public arts advocates, some that are here in the audience, and there's a lot of history to public art in Columbus. So I want to thank Marshall Schwartz, first of all, David Guion from the Dublin Arts Council, Amanda Golden here from Designing Local, Betsy Pandora, who I don't think is here, but really a trailblazer in the Short North, Michelle Brandt here with us, Diane Nance, who chaired the Public Art Commission, I think for 15 or 16 years, our good friends Amy and Greg at the CDDC down in front here, Morbsy, Mike Stevens, Jennifer Fenning, and Jim and Michael Reese. If you get a chance while you're here, you got to go to the Washington Gladden Social Justice Park, which is at Broad and Cleveland, and there's an incredible sculpture there that I think would amaze you while you're here. So with that, I think we're ready to take.
May I recognize someone too?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to recognize my partner in art and in life who has joined me here today, David Feldman. If you would stand up. David, STEAM doesn't just happen on its own. Artists need to work together with technologists, and David has opened my eyes to how we bring this work to scales to reach more people. Not only his leadership in the computer software development of our studio, but also the creativity in business to understand how you navigate insurance issues, government funding issues, the many kinds of problem solving that we have needed, as well as inspiration. So thank you, David.
Before the first question, I also want to mention Jamie Goldstein, who's here with me today. She is leading the work on the public art plan, and we're going to spend a year on this. The City of Columbus and Franklin County Commissioners have given us the money to do this, have entrusted us with this. Jeff is helping out on that. It's going to be great. And also Mackenzie Swinehart, who works for me at GCAC, she has just approved 23 more new murals for the city of Columbus that involve 8 organizations, 15 artists, and $123,000 in public money spend. So by this time next year, there'll be 23 new murals out in the neighborhoods. Thank you, Mackenzie, for that. So I guess we should take a few questions. Sophia?
Great, thank you so much. Janet, this question is for you. Can you talk a little bit more about the long-term public reaction to your work in other cities? How has this been incorporated into the work and their identity as a community?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that very first piece in Porto, Portugal. Somebody called me, they said, go to Google Earth and, to go to Europe at the level where there's only one image representing each country and see what is the image representing the entire country of Portugal. And someone took a photo of my work. I don't know what algorithm made them pick that, but that now represents the whole country. And then somebody sent me a photo at their soccer stadium, they call it the football stadium, and the image of the city is a silhouette of the sculpture. The Wall Street Journal did an article looking at the various American cities that are airport hubs. And what do you think was the image representing the whole city of Phoenix, the 4th largest city in the United States? The sculpture I showed you. Her secret is patience. So this is telling me that the works become part of identity. That when you create a place that holds people, that shelters people, that leads them to discover it over and over again, that builds community and identity. And my work is always looking at place and history and culture. This piece, Current, is about Columbus. It could not go anywhere else. It really couldn't go anywhere else, right? It is about you, it is about this place, and my greatest hope is that it can become part of identity and pride of place.
Renee Delane from Women Who Dare. Janet, you seem to find a way out of no way. What challenges have you had, or what's the biggest challenge in terms of convincing naysayers or people in a city or a country that are not for this and has come to your attention? How do you do this?
I mean, every single thing. you cannot even imagine. For example, here in Columbus, these buildings many of them are historically preserved buildings. So in order to light them, we have had to find a way to mount the lights in the mortar between historic bricks. Can you imagine? Like when everything, people say that's impossible, we find a way, right? That's the Columbus way, right? And I think when you look at a piece like this and you realize I've never seen a piece over a major thoroughfare like this, you think about all the problem solving, we have had fire marshals who wanted to stop our work. We've had traffic control, the kinds of things I've heard is like, it will distract drivers, so we cannot allow this. The one thing I will say, you come from an organization called Women Who Dare. The title of the piece I shared in Phoenix, Her Secret is Patience. It comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the full line is, adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. So if you're not going to give up, it's just a question of how long it's going to take.
This question comes from, I'm sorry, Jeff. This question comes from our online viewers. Julie Keckstein says, Gay and High Street was rockin' when I worked there in the late 70s. Who can forget the legendary rally at the Alley Nights, which sounds like a lot of fun. I was not here in the 1970s. What else will be coming to Gay Street? And what else will there be for individuals to do?
So our little study group that's been working on this actually looked back at pictures from the 70s in Rally in the Alley, and I'm just old enough to remember sneaking down there. My brother was smiling because he's brought it up before too. He's a few years older than I am and probably remembers it even more so. But that's the idea, really, is to create an entertainment and an arts district or neighborhood that would have activities like that again are open to all. The rally, as I remember, the rally in the alley, I think was basically free from what I remember, and they were kind of beneficial concerts on an after-work basis for many of the workers downtown. So I absolutely envision on a go-forward basis things like that beginning to happen again. So we're looking at the Gay Street area as the nucleus kind of what could be successful where it is and then grow out from there. Our central business district and that which the CDDC and others are charged with planning and figuring out is so large, you have to start somewhere. So the more energetic and the more compact and planned in a good way, meaning activities and things for all people that you can get done there, I think it just bleeds into the idea that it grows out from there and starts to connect those assets that we were talking about that are popular in and of themselves.
We can dare the city to make those cross streets pedestrian only at certain times. A lot of cities are able to do that. And let's give the streets back to people when we can.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. Hi, how's it going? My name is Mandy. I am a local contemporary muralist, mostly known as Birdie. Honestly, Janet, you're amazing. I find your story incredible. I only wish there was more artists in the room to be here to talk to you and be inspired by you. That is my only comment there. My question is, as Columbus finds this identity and really has this platform to really create who we are, to show the world, and love public art, what are ways that we are implementing, a plan to help the underground culture? Because for me, I started out as a graffiti writer. And really, if we don't give people the platform that want to paint their city actively, and we're just approving art, where is our culture, right? So I've always said a city that paints itself is a city that loves itself. So my question to you guys is, what are ways that we are implementing a big foundation for street artists, graffiti writers, and the underground culture to feel like they belong in this city and can actually make impact?
Can I start with that? Okay. Please. Mandy, thank you. So I have to tell everyone, Mandy Caskey has just finished a full-length mural on the back of the Junto Hotel in Franklinton, and it is spectacular. Yes, let's give her a round of applause. She also just painted a bunch of abandoned houses and then burned them down, which was also very cool. But what you're talking about is exactly the plan that we're going to be working on for the Columbus, and we're going to get it right. We're going to take our time doing it. There's going to be lots of opportunities for public input from folks like you. I, too, love graffiti art. It's actually my favorite thing. I shouldn't probably say that publicly. I don't want to encourage that, but absolutely, that's why we're doing this plan. We need to find a funding model for this. We need to find a model to maintain this work, and we need to develop our collection, curate it. What these two have done is an incredible catalyst for this work. Just incredible. I couldn't ask for more, honestly. What would you add to that?
Well, I'm supportive, so I think I'm not wired, to the same degree that you are within the arts community in and of itself, but we are fully supportive, both as an individual and as a family, of seeing it proliferate, be protected, taken care of, and grown. So to the extent that we can help in that regard, more than likely financially, I'm not an artist, that's for sure. So we'd be, more than happy to do that. But I think I'm on the panel that Tom has pulled together around the public arts plan. And as a developer, I mentioned this earlier, there was talk over the years about a percentage of the project development kind of cost that would come with either art that a developer commissions specific to their project, or maybe even longer term that goes into a kitty that ends up supporting, public art really at all levels, which I happen to agree with, so.
We can applaud for that, yes.
One last quick question. How many artists do you have on your committee helping you decide on the public art plan?
How many, Jamie? Yeah, 3, 4, yeah. Yeah.
5 out of 15 was the answer. That's very impressive. Yeah.
Thanks, Mandy.
Hi, my name's Marcia Evans. I have Marcia Evans Gallery, and I think we would be amiss to not mention the very vibrant Short North Arts District, which is literally blocks away from downtown. I am not only a gallery owner in the Short North, I have had 37 years of industry experience with art galleries and corporate art consulting, but I also live on Gay and 3rd. So I want to say that downtown has been vibrant for many years. I applaud the public art piece. I think it's lovely. I was looking at it from my balcony this morning and last night. A very pleasant view. But I think we need to work together with the Short North Arts District as well, because it has been here for a very long time and has really been very supportive of all the arts. And we also have many public arts artists that I think are very much worth mentioning. People like Stephen Canetto, who has sculpture all over Columbus, all over Ohio. John Evans, 23-foot wall sculptures in the Grange building, insurance building. Stephen Bush. John Moran, who's in the Kaufman Park Sculpture Park. So kudos to all these people. I think everybody needs recognition. Yes, artists always need more recognition, but good luck on future adventures. But let's work together with what we already have as a very vibrant arts community, and love being here today. Thank you.
For one more question, and this one also came from online. Jeff, will Columbus achieve a density tipping point at some point in the near future? And when we have more and more individuals moving back down either to live or work, how can we get to that tipping point, and what do we currently lack?
Well, I think the stated goal of CDDC at this point is 40,000 downtown residents by 2040. I think I got that right. And it sounds, and we're at about 12,000 now, but on our way quickly to probably 14, 15, 16,000. Again, which is spread out downtown. A lot of things in the work, though, but that density that's what solves and makes the city that much more livable. I think, what's going to be interesting, especially with Intel and what's going on in Northeast Columbus, for lack of a better word, let's just call it that, in our community, in our kind of inability in the suburbs to solve the housing, at least sheer number of units. Let's not get into kind of cost or affordability, but the sheer number of single-family homes and apartments to be able to house the job creation and the residents that are relocating to Columbus. I think downtown's going to be a very, very much of a beneficiary of those individuals and those jobs that are being created, at least partly because downtown welcomes the density. I mean, no one complains about density downtown, as per this question. And it's already set up as a city because of the way we have the streets, we have the police department, the fire department, we've got gas, electric, water, sewer, all of the things, libraries, et cetera, all the things that take many, many years and lots of dollars to continue to push out, we already have downtown, and we were set up for at least 40,000, if not more. So I think we're in a prime position to really kind of capitalize on that. And 40,000 people, I think when I was growing up here in Upper Arlington, I think it was 42,000 people roughly at that point in time. And if you think about that, if downtown had 40,000 people and it was as large as some of our larger suburbs, it'd be a pretty happening place, I think, so.
Well, we are exactly out of time, and I think Doug is going to come back up. And I know I'm not supposed to thank you, but honestly, Jeff and Janet, let's go nuts for them, all right?
Well, it sounds like you found today's forum as interesting as I did. I drove under the installation on the way here. It is spectacular, so if you get a chance on the way back, go down High Street and check it out. Once more, I want to thank our series presenter, the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation and Capital South, our series sponsor, Thompson Hine, and our forum sponsor, King Business Interiors, and to the Grange Insurance Autobahn Center for hosting us once again. Thank you to our virtual seat patrons, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for supporting today's live stream. Very special appreciation to today's speakers, Marshall Shorts, Janet Echelman, Jeff Edwards, and our host, Tom Katzenmeyer. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Please make plans now to attend next Wednesday's lunch forum here at the Grange as we address the consequences of redlining in Columbus with an expert panel. Please also take a moment to answer the short survey that is in your flyer. We could not do this without you. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the day.